That night, I worked late and left the office. There were only a few sparse streetlights left on the street, swaying in the rain, and the raindrops beat against my umbrella, making a dull sound. It was the first night I moved into my new home, and with the anticipation of a new life and a tired body, I stumbled towards the place that had not yet become home. As I walked through the dimly lit streets, rainwater streamed on the ground and my thoughts flowed with it. The city always felt so cold to me. People were in a hurry and didn't have much interaction with each other. And I, a recent outsider, was trying to find my own place in the city. I arrived at the street in front of my new home, an old house that looked a bit dated, but the rent was cheap and it was good enough for a newcomer like me. I opened the door and stepped inside, the room still smelling of paint and old furniture. I took off my wet jacket and walked into the living room. The house was old, but the layout was pretty cozy. I turned on a couple of lights to warm up the room. I decided to make a hot cup of tea and then go take a hot shower to get rid of the chill. Just as I was about to relax, suddenly the quiet of the room was shattered by the ringing of the phone. I froze for a moment because I hadn't installed a landline yet. I looked around for the source of the sound and realized that it was an old telephone ringing in the corner of the living room. This came as a surprise to me because I didn't remember seeing this phone in the house.
You shouldn't be there.
The voice sounded even lower and more threatening when it rang again. I tried to press the issue, but the person on the other end of the line was just silent. I felt like I was caught up in a bad prank, but my instincts told me it wasn't that simple. The phone rang one after another, and each time it was the same voice, and each time it made my heart beat faster. I looked around, hoping to find some clue or explanation, but there was nothing in the room but me and the phone that kept ringing. The fear in my mind escalated and I began to think back to the past of this house. It was a house I had inherited from an old friend who, before he passed away, told me that there was something unusual about it. I hadn't paid much attention to his words at the time, but now I was beginning to wonder if he had left any secrets behind that he hadn't told me. The phone rang again, and the voice seemed to laugh at my helplessness.
You can't run away.
I felt an invisible force closing in that seemed to be extending from the other end of the phone line. I tried to leave the house, but every time I walked toward the door, the phone would ring and the voice would become even more shrill and piercing. I felt trapped, like I was in an invisible cage. Throughout the night, I struggled with the intimidation of that voice and the fear within myself. I tried to figure out the reason behind it all, but my mind became confused and I couldn't focus. Finally, the day dawned and the rain stopped. The phone went quiet as well. As if released, I left that house in a hurry. I saw the line on the car window and felt a deep despair. It seemed to summarize the horrible experience of the whole night. In the days that followed, I tried to learn more about the history of the house. I discovered that a bizarre murder had taken place here many years ago. The victim made a phone call before he died, but the content of that call remains a mystery to this day. I began to wonder if the voice was related to this unsolved mystery. Perhaps, the voice was trying to tell me something, or maybe, it was just trying to pull me into its own world of horror. In any case, I decided never to return to that house. The line lingered in my mind, becoming a perpetual nightmare. You will never be alone. The words seemed to imply that the voice, the fear of that night, would be with me forever. On that night of pouring rain, I was driving alone on an isolated country road. The headlights were dim in the rain, and the trees on both sides of the road swayed like ghosts. It was on my way home from a friend's party I had just finished. I was thinking to myself that this weather is really not suitable for driving. Suddenly, my car stalled and stopped in the middle of the road. I tried to restart the engine but nothing happened. The rain outside was getting heavier and heavier, and I felt a trace of uneasiness begin to spread in my heart. I took out my cell phone and found that the signal had unexpectedly disappeared. It looked like I would have to stay in the car and wait for the rain to stop or for someone to come by and help. Just then, I saw a figure in the distance swaying in the rain towards me. The person was wearing a long trench coat and a hat, and his face was not clearly visible in the darkness. I instinctively felt a twinge of fear, but at the same time wanted help. The man walked over to my car and knocked gently on the window. I hesitated, then rolled down the window. The rain dripped in through the window with an icy chill. I couldn't see his face, only the hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth.
Bad weather. Need any help?
His voice was low and raspy. I nodded, trying to hide my uneasiness. I told him my car had suddenly stalled and my cell phone had no signal. He was silent for a moment, then said,
I live not far from here. Come with me. It's too dangerous out there.
I hesitated, but thinking that I had no other choice in such a rainy night, I could only follow him out of the car and into the rain. The rain soaked my clothes, and the trenchcoat man's steps were firm and strong as I struggled to keep up with him. We passed through a dense forest and came to an old-looking stone house. The outside walls of the house were covered in creepers and heavy curtains hung from the windows. He opened the door and gestured for me to enter. The interior of the house was quaintly furnished with some outdated furniture and old photographs hanging on the walls. He points to a small room.
You can rest here for a while. I'll see if I can fix your car.
I entered the room and found it contained only a bed and a table lamp. Exhaustion and the cold made me decide to lie down and rest for a while. But the very moment I lay down, I suddenly realized something. I had no idea who this man was or where I was now. Outside the house, the rain was still loud. I tried to relax, but my heart was filled with unease. Just then, I heard some strange noises outside the house, like someone whispering. I got up and walked to the door and tried to listen, but the voices were far away and elusive. I decided to go and explore and gingerly stepped out of the room. The house was dim and quiet, with only the faint sound of footsteps coming from upstairs. I walked slowly up the stairs, my heart beating faster with each step. When I reached the upper floor, I saw a door that was slightly ajar, with a glimmer of light coming through the crack. I moved closer to the door, my ear pressed against it, and heard some muffled conversations. I took a deep breath and gently pushed the door open to see the inside of the house. As I gently pushed open the door, the sight before me made me almost unable to believe my eyes. The room was filled with all sorts of ancient objects and books, and in the center was a large table with all sorts of strange tools and some vague manuscripts scattered on it. On the wall hung some ancient maps and strange symbols. In one corner of the room, an old radio was crackling. Even more alarming, I saw that the man was standing at a table, talking in a low voice to another figure. The figure looked even more odd, wearing a robe with disheveled hair and with his back to me. I tried to back away silently, but my footsteps startled them. They turned their heads, the man with a wary look in his eyes and the robed figure with a wry smile.
You're awake!
The trenchcoat man said, a hint of nervousness in his tone.
You shouldn't be here!
I felt a sense of foreboding, and I knew I had to get out of this place as soon as possible. I began to back away, moving toward the door, while in my mind I was planning an escape route.
Wait.
The robed figure spoke, his voice low and magnetic.
Perhaps you can help us.
I stopped in my tracks, my mind puzzled. He walked up to me, holding a very old-looking book in his hand.
We have been searching for an ancient secret,
He continued.
and this book mentions a key that will unlock it. And you, perhaps, are that key.
I felt a deep fear. I had no idea what they were talking about, but I could sense that these things were far beyond my comprehension. I turned and ran for the stairs, rushing down them. I heard them calling out to me behind me, but I didn't stop. I rushed out of the house and the rain was still pouring down. I ran back to my car and realized that it was suddenly able to start. Without thinking much, I immediately started the car and quickly drove away from that place. I kept driving until I was far away from that area. By the time I got home safely, it was already dawn. I sat on the couch, thinking back on the whole night, and it felt like a nightmare. But in my pocket, I found a note that read,
"We'll see you again."
Around the edge of the note was printed the same symbol as in that ancient book. Since then, I've often felt stalked, and always felt that something was creeping up on me. That rainy night, and the secret in that old house, became a mystery that I could not solve for the rest of my life.